Hello everyone, welcome to week 3 of SPCM 200. You might have seen the announcement that the university sent out to all of us, but apparently we're not going back to face-to-face next week. It has been pushed back to week 5 will be the first in-person class experience we have. I'll make a Canvas announcement about that as well, just so everyone's in the know. Some of you may be rejoicing about that. I find it a little annoying because what I had planned next week definitely is an in-person thing. But alas, we shall just power through it, I suppose. But in the meantime, this one should be a relatively quick video. I'm just going over the informative unit, and that will be chapter 13 of your textbook. So if you've already read that, you're going to be pretty good to go. But yeah, if you see me quickly moving through any slides, it's because this PowerPoint was made last semester, so some information doesn't necessarily pertain to you. But so what is an informative speech? Informative speaking we should think of as the form of speaking that empowers others to decide or act. Since you're all in academic settings, informative speaking is something that you likely encounter every single day when you go to class. This is an example of informative speaking. We always mention in this class that persuasion is an inevitable part of public speaking. You never can't be persuasive when speaking in one way or another. But in this regard, the only persuasion that should really be happening is persuading others to learn. And so what that essentially means is there's objectivity, which is when you look at an issue and you're not imbuing any personal bias into it. You're looking at it solely cold, hard facts. And then there's subjectivity, which is where you imbue your own personal experience and opinions into your argument. We're going to be leaning more so on the side of objectivity for this speech, for the sole purpose of trying to convey information in the most neutral way possible so people can formulate their own opinions. Depending on what topic you choose to speak on, this will be something where someone could be learning about it entirely new for the first time. It could be something that they've never had experience with, therefore they don't have any preconceived ideas about it. So you would rather give them the information to do with what they want rather than saying, I think that this is, like right now, I'm not saying I think informative speaking is the best form of public speaking there is. All other forms are bad, because then when someone's retaining new information, that might affect how they see it when that isn't necessarily something they should be taking into consideration, if that makes sense. But so it should empower others to act or decide, and that essentially means if people are learning about something, you hope that they leave the classroom maybe empowered to start doing something that they hadn't been doing before, or maybe just they've now decided where they stand on this certain topic, different things like that. So essentially, with informative speaking, you don't want to try to take on the world. You don't want to talk about an issue where you have to show all sides. That's an important part of informative speaking. You want to be thorough, and this is a relatively shorter speech. We don't want to accidentally branch into the public deliberation speech or like the policy speech, so maybe staying away from those hot button issues. Those will be reserved more for when you have experience speaking, you can feel a bit more confident in speaking on these issues, and you have some experience under your belt. For informative speaking, genuinely, you can choose any topic that interests you. We'll get more into that in a few minutes, but just something to consider. So key pieces of an informative speech, these are things that pertain directly to our class. Successful informative speeches empower others. You don't want to speak on something only for your audience to walk away and be like, yeah, the sky's blue. I knew that. Like, you want your speech to be something that really can touch an audience member, something that makes them feel excited to be learning, not to put too much pressure on your shoulders. But it should be something that can possibly sway how someone feels. It will be 4 to 6 minutes in length. Again, I've told all of you that I have about a 30-second grace period, so if you go under 30 seconds or over 30 seconds, I'll be lenient about it, but anything less or more than that, and you'll start to get point deductions. Just try to stay within that 4 to 6 minute length. It's easier on this technological front because we can see how we're doing time-wise normally. You can time yourself. You can do that in class too. That'll be something that I discuss when we are face-to-face. But you can start over, refilm it, do anything you want essentially to meet these guidelines, something that isn't necessarily something you can do in class. You want to provide your audience with the best information, and what kind of constitutes as quote-unquote best information usually means it is by experts in the field that you're talking about, information that is new and contemporary. You don't want to say anything that's outdated because then that can affect how your audience understands it. Best information is thorough and really in depth with what you're talking about. If you are talking about social media platforms, for example, it might not be the best to center your whole speech on MySpace when maybe more contemporary platforms would be beneficial. Of course, if you're talking about a comprehensive history, you can mention MySpace, but ultimately at the end, talking about the more contemporary, like TikTok, for example, would be something your audience could relate better to, which means they could retain the information better. And audiences should leave thinking, wow, really? I didn't know that. And that is one of the most important things you should consider when choosing your topic. Some of you have sent in a topic already that I think after listening to this, you might be like, I don't know if that works per se. And you can just let me know and you can have a different topic. But it should be something that audiences don't know, so don't just do like, CSU is a college. We all know that. We all definitely know that. Don't do like the layout of the CSU campus because we all, okay, I guess maybe actually you could, being some of you maybe have not even seen the campus. But you know, the application process to CSU, for example, don't do something like that because we all clearly have done it. We all know about this. Do something that's exciting for you. Do something that maybe pertains to your field if you so wish. Just any topic that you can inform an audience about for 4 to 6 minutes. That is not information that they're all like, obviously this is true. Clearly this was set up for an in-person class, but what are some real-life examples of informative thinking you can speak of, or informative speaking? That would be like briefings. If you were at a company and you were just kind of sitting around a table like, all right, guys, this last month we've been up like 20% in sales. We've been doing this, this, and that, because all you're doing is informing people how things have been going. Public advisories, hey, it's snowy, please stay off the road. No one during public advisories usually is like, oh my God, it sucks that it's gonna rain. I hate that, because that's subjective. Like, it might not be awful to other people. It might be very beneficial to other people. Just things like that, just kind of trying to reiterate that point that informative speaking is usually the most compelling when there is that emphasis on objectivity. Testimonies, if you imagine being in court, you just kind of relay the information as you remember it or as it happened. And if you start to get too maybe personal attack, like if you start to do ad hominems with it, or if you start to veer off into how you interpret the situation, they'll kind of try to rein you back in. Lectures, of course, tutorials, those are all examples of, I have this information and I'm just trying to relay it to you so you know it as well. But aren't all speeches persuasive? Yes, I kind of previewed this earlier. Kind of. However, in informative speaking, speakers do not speak with an agenda to advocate their position. So if you were to suggest for an informative speech something along the lines of why I think X is better than Y, yes, you're informing, but you're informing a certain side. You're not being all encompassing on this issue. And the purpose is to be as informative as possible so your audience can make their own decision. So don't speak with an agenda to be like, I think that starting CSU hybrid would have been better than this delayed. Like, that's not my personal opinion. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that is immediately setting the audience with a tone of personal opinion. Decisions and actions taken after a speech are not done at the behest of the speaker. So, for example, if you were talking about the availability of recycle bins on college campus, you could do something like that. But the main difference would be, instead of at the end you having this call to action where you're like, so in the corner of every classroom you can see a recycle bin. I think that every time you're done drinking something, you should put it there and help save the environment. Instead of being as direct like that in an informative speech, you should just give them so much information about, like, it helps the environment. Some people say it's hard, but there has been an increase in availability of recycle bins, and you should give them so much information that at the end of the speech they're like, oh my god, I think it would be good if I recycle, and they take it upon themselves to make that action. What to keep in mind for your speech, so just kind of like little aspects of informative speech is be genuinely informative. That kind of falls along the line of don't say just basic surface level information. Like if you were giving a lecture about crayons, don't be like, there are 36 in this pack. There's a blue one, a green, like we all have eyes and could see that. Like it's just kind of obvious information. Genuinely informative is like, you're gonna have to do research for this. Speak with clarity, be direct, be kind of simple. You can have examples. Clearly, in this, I'm a fan of examples. I cannot see your guys' reaction, therefore I'm not entirely certain if I am informing you. I'm hoping. But speaking with clarity is just trying to be as straight to the point as possible, trying to not use any sort of like really fluffy word padding language that distracts from your main point. You'll want an informative organization. This could be beneficial for all of you to try out that IC3 or I3C pattern we've been kind of like talking about or dancing around. And that's introduction, the 3 main points, conclusion. This could be beneficial of you choose your topic. Hi, I'm so-and-so. This is the topic I'm speaking of. Preview it a little bit and then have 3 main points. Like if we're going with that recycling example, maybe like the history of recycling, the availability, and the environmental impact. Those could be your 3 main points, and then those could be the ones that you focus on, and then you conclude. Have important and credible evidence. This is vitally important. I wish that we were in person for me to be able to show you examples of where to find this information. But having important and credible evidence is kind of rely more on peer-reviewed journals. Use the CSU library a bit more. Don't just kind of like Google and use the first 5 things that come up, like Wikipedia or anything like that. And one of the most important things that you'll have to do is when you're citing something, first of all, you need to cite it within your outline, but you also need to cite it verbally. And what that kind of entails is this 3 points of attribution you have to do. And that's essentially 3 ways you can verbally give credit to your person. So let's say you have a fact, and you could say, as said by Martin Luther King, that you have a name, that's one form of attribution. In his XYZ speech, whatever that year is, that's a second form of attribution because you're giving us a date. Speech, I have a dream, that's the third one because you named the speech. If you wanted to go above and beyond, you could be like at, insert location, like those different things are what we mean by attribution. What ones you give kind of depend on what you think is more vital for the information. Always who said it, that's a given, you need to have that. But then same with like if you're citing author of a peer-reviewed journal, where are they coming from? Is this like a professor at Miami State University? Is it just someone who wrote a Tumblr blog? Like giving these points of attribution not only gives credit to who is saying it, but it also helps your audience kind of understand how they should be taking this information. That's not to say this like hypothetical professor is more important than this hypothetical Tumblr person, but we can kind of assume, and when we hear that the professor might have done more research into this with more faculties available at his disposal than the Tumblr person might have. So just taking into consideration, do you want one of your attributes to be date? That can be important when you're trying to emphasize like something's how contemporary something is or how dated it might be. Location can be important. How is a speech received if it's given in Texas rather than maybe New York? There are just different, the name of the speech, of course, can be important, especially if they have multiple different speeches. Things like that. And some things can compound upon another, like a speech by Joe Biden, for example, in 1994 is going to read different than a speech in 2021 because his position has changed. Just different things like that. It's vital that you have 3 points of attribution. Of course, I will be lenient in these first few speeches because A, we haven't had a chance to meet, and I know I haven't been the best at getting these videos out, I'm sorry, but just to have the 3 points of attribution, because when we get to like the public deliberation speech and the policy speech, those are going to be very vital and you'll get points docked off, whereas here it's a little lower stakes. If you're doing them maybe wrong or not enough, this is the time for learning. And then this is an example. I won't play it right now, but it's available to you on the Canvas site in the informative speech module, so you can go check that out. This is an example of a speech about ALS, and it's pretty good. She has some kind of mistakes that she makes throughout, but overall, this would be a very good, if you did this type of speech for your first one, this would be good because she is quite informative. It just kind of is a little repetitive in her vocal intonation. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. I will be in contact with you about what we'll be doing for the 4th week, but in the meantime, make sure to turn in your topic proposal to me on Sunday, and I believe your quiz number 1 or 2 is due on Sunday as well. Just make sure to look at that. And then this informative speech will be due next Friday by midnight. And it will be digitally because we won't be able to see each other. But yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. If you have any hardships come up that you need accommodated, just let me know. I'm here for you, and I promise I just want you to do as good as you can. Have a good rest of your week.